Test, test, 1, 2. 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 Test, test, 1, 2.
Okay, so we've got the new members, and the new members are on the board. We have 30 new members for this month, which is excellent, and we seem to be ever growing. I'm not quite certain what our numbers are. So we've got the new members, and the new members are on the board. We have 30 new members for this month, which is excellent, and we seem to be ever growing. I'm not quite certain what our numbers are. So we've got Houston, we have a problem. Are we right now, Rob? All right. Okay, so there are new members. Are there any new members here tonight? One? Don't be shy, just the one. Okay, welcome to the society. Normally I'd say general meetings isn't really the time to get to know anyone. Most of our activity is in our sections, so we have a number of sections, and find out which part of astronomy that you're interested in, whether it's astrophotography or whether it's radio astronomy or lunar and planetary or solar. There's a section there that's available for yourself. So feel free to go along to those meetings. Tonight is more of a social meeting, so you should be able to get to meet a few people. So if at the end, come up and see me and introduce yourself if I'm not inundated with other people. So, okay. Could we have Ian Grant's photo up, please? Unfortunately, we lost one of our long-term members, Dr. Ian Grant. He's been with the Society for quite a few decades. I'm not sure exactly how long, but there he is there. He's passed away with, he had an illness, cancer, got him, and his funeral was today. Here he is standing beside his beloved C8 telescope, which he used, and that's, I believe, the 2008 Star Party. If you wouldn't mind, if we could have a minute's silence for Ian. Thank you. I think we'll move forward and ask Perry to do Sky for the month. Perry, you ready to do that? Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Good evening, everybody. It's a rhetorical question, guys. You don't have to answer. Most of you have probably seen or heard something about the Geminid meteor shower. Put your hand up if you have. A few people have. Cooler, you haven't. Oh, well, you didn't put your hand up. Thank you, that's it. We've got a quorum. We usually get a very good display from the Geminids, even here in the southern hemisphere, even though they're a northerly stream and the radiant doesn't rise very high above the horizon for us. Even so, we still get perhaps up to, on good years, 30, 40, 50 meteors per hour for the zenithal hourly rate. There's some pictures. That's one from the northern hemisphere. Do we have another one there? That's Phil Hart's picture from LMDSS. Is there another one there? And another one of Phil Hart's pictures on a different occasion. The thing with the Geminid shower, however, is that it has good years and bad years. So what would comprise a bad year for a very reliable meteor shower? Well, it would be the position of the moon and what phase it's in. And blow me down if this year both of them aren't in the worst possible position for us. The moon will be nearly full and it'll be in the constellation of Gemini. So this year, what we're going to be looking at is not going to be anything like that. In fact, can you please give us the next slide? We're going to be looking at the annual Disappointeds. The annual Disappointeds meteor shower, billed by Space Buff as nature's most lacklustre fireworks display, is set to thoroughly underwhelm skywatchers once again. Not a real headline, ladies and gentlemen, but I thought it fitted the occasion rather well, because we will be really fortunate this year if we get to see anything more than about 5 to 15 meteors at its best. And if you're in the city, perhaps not even that. Well, it's almost, Mark said 0, and I wouldn't go as far as that, Mark, because there could be a sporadic, but there won't be a lot to see. Even so, occasionally there's some very bright Geminids, almost bolide proportions, so it's still worth getting up on the Sunday morning, this Sunday morning. The radiant is up at around 11:30 or 12, and you can start watching them then. You won't get as much activity as later in the morning, but it'll still be worth having a look. Now, for those that have never done any meteor observing before, what all experienced meteor observers do is they get a banana lounge. They open it up. They get a sleeping bag. They crawl into the sleeping bag. They have a flask of cognac with them, just to stay warm, mind you, and medicinal purposes. Some coffee, some music. You don't need a telescope. No matter what was portrayed in that otherwise very good movie Contact, and I think there's been a couple of other ones, you don't look at meteor showers with telescopes. Just your own eyes is all you need. Look somewhere in the vicinity of northwest. It doesn't matter that you look exactly at the radiant. And sit back and wait. Try and do it for at least an hour. Last time I did it in downtown Cheltenham, would you believe, a fox went past in front of me. Middle of the night. Anyway, so likely to be the Disappointeds this year, not the Geminids, but even so, still worth getting up and having a look. Next Saturday, not this coming one, the following one on the 21st, of course, is the Starbecue. How many people are going to the Starbecue? There's a whole bunch in here that aren't going. What are you guys doing? What's going on? Ed, what's your excuse? No excuse. Got to be in it to win it, dude. There's no way around it. What I thought we'd do for Sky for the month tonight is have a look at all the things that Ed is going to miss out on by not... Hang on, I haven't started yet, but I like your enthusiasm. So can we have Starry Night, please, Ken? Thank you. Can we go to this afternoon? Should I drive? Maybe I should drive. Yeah, thank you. Over here we have the pertinent details: time, month, day, year. Up here, the directions. And what I'll do is just lift it slightly. And we know that we're looking west, not just because the sun is there, but there's also a little W there at the bottom. Thanks, mate. Let's advance the time a little bit, see what there is to see. Sun setting very late at the moment because on Sunday it'll be the southern hemisphere summer solstice. The word, of course, comes from the Latin for solstire, meaning to stand still, because that's what the sun does for a few days, doesn't move much. Venus, the brightest thing in the sky tonight, apart from the moon. Saturn, just next to it, and Jupiter getting pretty close to the sun down there. Let's advance the time some more. And though the planets are in the west, most of the fun is in the east. This is a great time of year to be out and observing, because there's a host of bright constellations. Let's advance the time some more. And old friends appear that we haven't seen at this time of night for quite a while. And if we advance the date to the 21st, that's not happening. All right, the 12th, 13th, 14th, the moon's out of the sky. 21st. Let's have a look at all the galactic clusters, first of all, of stars that are part of this galaxy. The first one, the Pleiades, or the Seven Sisters. Beautiful group of stars seen from both hemispheres, and not only are the Seven Sisters there, Alcyone, Pleione, Electra, Saliano, Taygeta, Maya, and Sterope. Can you see that there? It says Sterope. That's a mistake, ladies and gentlemen. There should be a capital A at the start of that name. This is how misinformation gets about. Somebody makes a mistake, somebody else repeats it, and it keeps perpetuating itself. This is Asterope, and it's a beautiful name. Don't ever forget it. And if you ever see Sterope in a book, in an atlas, goddamn cross it out. Did I make that point strongly enough? Or I could have been a bit stronger, I think, yeah, maybe. But seriously, beautiful group of stars, well worth your attention. Naked eye, they look like fireflies. A little bit further over, even though they're not as tightly packed, let's make it a little bit darker. The Pleiades Half-Sisters. This upside down V represents the Pleiades cluster, and if you include this extra line of stars, it's an N. And right here is Aldebaran, which is not a member of the cluster. It's quite a bit closer to us than the cluster is. So it's a bit like looking at an object through your windscreen, and there's a spot on your windscreen between you and the object on your car. In binoculars, both of these objects look splendid. But if we carry on a little bit more, and we head down a little bit lower, make it a bit darker as well. Advance the time some more. Okay, zoom in a little bit more. This is the constellation Auriga, and through here we have a number of clusters, M38, M36 and M37 are through here. And again, you can see them with binoculars pretty well. Let's zoom in. Right, oops, gone a bit too far. Right here is M38, the most northerly of the three. Bit further over, M36. Let's zoom in on that. Right here. And a bit further still, M37, right there. Beautiful in a small telescope. You don't need a lot of aperture to see them, especially from a dark sky site as our Leon Mao site is. Now, M35 right here in Gemini is even better than the previous three in Auriga. If you've got a larger instrument, 10, 12 inches or more, you should be able to see an even more distant open cluster just behind M35. It won't be depicted in this Starry Night program, but believe me, it's there. Moving along a bit further still, we have the big dogs, Canis Major lying on its back. There's Sirius, Epsilon and Delta here. And this cluster, M41, is another beautiful object to have a look at. Nice colours in there, not as pronounced as the jewel box, but there nevertheless. A couple of clusters that are not often seen, and by the way, there's the front leg of the dog, the back of the dog goes that way, the rear leg is there, there's the tail, the two eyes are there, and the nose at theta. The dog is lying on its back for us in the southern hemisphere. But if you take a line from Sirius through to Delta, or Wesson in this program and make an isosceles triangle with it, it comes down to here. This is the point, and there's two very different clusters in this location. One is quite bright, the other one a bit fainter. M47 is the brighter one, and through a telescope it looks a little bit like the constellation Orion, almost like you've got three stars in the middle and a bright one on top and a bright one at the bottom. A little below that is a fainter cluster, but perhaps more interesting, because not only is it a beautiful galactic cluster, it also contains a magnificent planetary nebula. There it is. Really worth having a look at this object. When the posts, if anyone's driven the entry road into the site, you would have seen all the posts with M1, M2, M3, all the way, all the Messier objects. We were raising money at that point by selling the posts to members, and you can have your name put on it, or you could at that time. And I wanted to get one of each of the deep sky objects. I got a galaxy and a nebula and a globular cluster, but I didn't have enough money to get both a planetary nebula and an open cluster, so guess what I bought? Right there. So if you're driving the road and you look for M47, sorry, 46, 47 is that one, you will see it has my name on it because I'm a cheapskate. A little bit further over is another beautiful Messier cluster, M93. So not far away from the other two, and also worth having a look at. Now, to get away from Messier, we have to go further south, and we will do that now because there's, oops, sorry, pressing all the wrong buttons here. Let's go to the south. The Milky Way is rising. Alpha and Beta Centauri are low. The Southern Cross is almost on its head. There's the coal sack. And right here is the jewel box, 4755, probably one of the most famous of all southern clusters. In binoculars, it makes a little triangle shape. With a telescope, you can start seeing the individual stars and some colours. And that's why John Herschel, when he was observing from the Cape of Good Hope, wrote of it as being like fine jewellery on a black velvet sky. Very poetic. A little bit higher up, some more interesting clusters. Right here is the first object that was photographed by the Hubble Space Telescope. Mark that in your trivia file in your brain. 3532, also known as the Pincushion Cluster. If you've ever seen an old pincushion with lots of holes in it from the pins, this is what it looks like in a telescope. A magnificent object. Bit above it is the Eta Carinae Nebula, but not far from Eta Carinae is perhaps my favourite little cluster in the southern sky, 3293, otherwise known as the Pyramid Cluster. Like if you're flying over the top of it, you can see the square shape and the concentric lines coming into the middle, the tip of the pyramid. The other ones to look out for, and this one is for binoculars only, right here, the Theta Carinae cluster, IC2602, and the Five of Diamonds. Gunnar, yes, you're responsible for that, and you've never told me where you got it from. Yep. So that's when I first saw it as the Five of Diamonds in one of Gunnar's, I suppose we can call it astronomy for the people, even though it wasn't called that then, was it? So well worth looking at that with binoculars. And the final couple of clusters in this area between the Southern Cross and right there and the Pincushion Cluster is the Snail Shell Cluster, because it has these winding spirals of stars when you look at it through a telescope. Now, Patrick Moore, in his first catalogue, the Caldwell catalogue, called it the Gamma Centauri cluster because he thought it was the Lambda, well, no, actually he called it the Gamma Centauri cluster, but it's really the Lambda Centauri because Lambda looked a little bit like Gamma when it's viewed upside down. So from that you can guess he never looked at it through a telescope, but just made his catalogue up out of looking at star charts, which is a bit like cheating. I'll leave you with two final things that you can look at the Starbecue through a small telescope, and they will be quite impressive. Actually, that's not where I want to go. Let's go here. I think we'll agree that Achernar is pretty easy to find. It's a first magnitude star and easily spotted high up in the southern sky at this time of year. The Cat's Eye double star is 1 degree north of Achernar. It's about magnitude 5.5, and if you use your telescope to look at it a bit more closely, you will find two even magnitude deep yellow stars that always remind me of a cat's eyes when your headlights catch them down a laneway. Very deep yellow when you see them through a telescope from a dark site. So remember, that's right next to Achenar. If you've never seen it before, do yourself a favour. The other one is here at the Big Dog. Now, it's been given all sorts of names in catalogues, but it was originally catalogued as H3945. It is a beautiful pair of stars, one a deep blue and the other one orange. Now, the way to find it, here's the Big Dog, there's the back leg of the dog, from the paws through this star and as far again, and you come to that star. We'll center it and zoom in. Can you see where I'm pointing? A straight line slightly to the side. And there they are. Not even magnitude, but nice and bright and very nicely coloured. Again, do yourself a favour if you're up there at the Starbecue. In fact, you can look at it from here in Melbourne as well, because it doesn't suffer too much from light pollution at all, and well worth a look and reasonably easy to find. If you can't find it, come to Sky for the Night at the Starbecue under the real stars, and I will point it out for you then. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Perry. Normally at this stage we would break and have the social part of our meeting, but we're taking the opportunity to have some visitors from the Robotic Telescope Student Research and Education Conference. They're here in Melbourne, and we sort of pounced on them and sort of asked them very kindly if they would come and give us a bit of a talk. So the first speaker, which I'd like to introduce, is Kate Meredith. She's president of Geneva Lake Astrophysics and STEAM. I'm sure she will tell us what STEAM is all about. She's the former director of the Yorkies Educational Outreach Program at the University of Chicago, a veteran high school science teacher. She's passionate about making astronomy and STEAM accessible to everyone, regardless of their ability or background, and keeping the former Yorkies Observatory programs active and growing until they can once again be held at a historic observatory in Williams Bay, Wisconsin. So without any other ado, I'd like to welcome Kate up to give you a talk. There will be questions afterwards.
Well, thank you everyone for inviting me to speak here tonight. I will show you a few of my pictures of Yorkies in just a minute. So when I heard Jim spoke at our conference on the first day, I feel like we're kind of kindred spirits already, because your passions and struggles to preserve history sound a bit like ours, although melting aluminum was not part of our story. So yes, I'm Kate Meredith. I'm the former director of education at this amazing place, Yorkies Observatory in Williams Bay, Wisconsin in the US, just 2-hour drive north of Chicago. Raise your hand if you've heard of Yorkies. All right, so most of you have. So Yorkies was built in 1897 by Charles Tyson Yorkies, and George Ellery Hale was the founding astronomer at that observatory. The history of that observatory is incredibly rich, and I am not the best person to tell you that story. But what I can tell you is of its final year, and I can tell you a little bit about its beauty and what the status of this observatory is right now. So if you just go ahead and hit that play button for me, I'm just going to let you take a look at a few pictures of Yorkies Observatory. It is the birthplace of what we call modern astrophysics. It's the point in our history by which we quit looking up at the sky in order to catalog things, and we started using that information to answer massive questions about the universe. What is our place? Where, you know, are there other objects out there? Are there other planets? At the time that this observatory was opened in 1897, we still didn't think there was no other galaxies out there. I may not know the most about the history, but I think I have the most pictures of Yorkies. For 3 years, I was blessed to live on the property. My walk to work was 2 minutes from door to door, and I got to see this amazing building and its architecture in every mood possible. But what really happens at Yorkies really has to do with the education and having students involved with every aspect of being part of astronomy, whether it was building hats for star parties, a Harry Potter themed star party, or whether it was you know, just mapping, tracking variable stars, or doing cutting-edge research. This is an amazing place. I'm showing you lots of snow pictures because I'm just really, it's beautiful there in the snow. We did a lot of work in accessibility in astronomy until the day it closed. It's my walk up to my office there to the left. This is from my front porch. The Great Refracting Telescope, weighing 16 tons, was always visible. The architecture there is amazing, and it has stories galore behind it. But what made it special was that it was available. We were very close to the Wisconsin School for the Blind and the Wisconsin School for the Deaf, and we worked hard over the years to make it accessible to everyone. George Ellery Hale talked Charles Tyson Yorkies into paying for this amazing building. It's shaped like a cross, and you truly feel like you are part of a holy experience when you're there. Students get to sit in the very seats where the names of Hale, Hubble, Chandrasekhar, Sagan, Kuiper, Barnard, Cudworth, Harper all worked there. Modern telescopes as well, 40-inch reflecting and a 24-inch reflecting telescopes are active on Skynet. But don't forget the Great Refracting Telescope. I've had the honor and privilege of pushing that telescope around the Great Dome and allowing students of all abilities to view through that scope. And I hope that one day soon that it will be open again and I'll get the chance to welcome you all there. Education just is a big part of what we do there. The Magic of Astronomy Star Party was my favorite event of the year. It was co-led by the students from the Wisconsin School for the Blind and our high school students who worked together for 1 full week. We also opened our programs. We're open to the deaf and hard of hearing. We did a lot of cutting edge work with making those programs accessible. We use 3D models and a Hugging the Dome to get an idea of truly what that was about. There's my home. There's me in my office. And now we wait. So that's the end of the slideshow there, but that last picture is one of the eeriest ones I have of the observatory, and it waits for us. In March of 2017, after 122 years of continuous operation, the University of Chicago announced, much to my surprise, that they would be closing that building. It was not open for debate. It was not open for our input. They announced the closing and said that in 7 months that it would be closed. They had no plans for how they would proceed. They only knew about the ending date. They came in with severance packages, for which I'm grateful for. It allowed us to regroup. We had at the time of the closing, we were in the middle of a $2.5 million National Science Foundation project to redesign image processing software so that it could be used independently by blind and low vision students equitably with fully sighted individuals to analyze astronomical data. The University of Chicago claimed in many press releases that there was no longer any valid research going on at this, cutting-edge research going on at this facility, and that it was obsolete. But they returned their portion of a $2.5 million Science Foundation grant. Geneva Lake Astrophysics and STEAM was formed in part to preserve that grant, to preserve our partnerships with schools in the area and keep up the good faith of the communities that had been part of the observatory education programs for many years. And so we, within the 7 months, while we continued to do summer camps, star parties, a robust internship program, continued the National Science Foundation grant, inventoried 20 years worth of supplies, negotiated for them back from the University of Chicago. We also launched Geneva Lake Astrophysics and STEAM. STEAM standing for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Mathematics. And I actually do believe that the arts belong in there. As we work on design projects like the software design project, we come to appreciate in astronomy, the design process that's really important. So our students need design and skills along with, that go hand in hand with the mathematics and the computational thinking and astronomy. So, and we all know the artistry of astronomy, and that amazing building is just full of stories and artistry. So we were successful in October 1st of 2008. We moved programs down the hill with the help of 65 volunteers, most of whom were teachers and amateur astronomers, students. We had $1,000 worth of boxes, which the University of Chicago gladly gave us. University of Chicago gave us half a month's operating expenses and said, good luck. We moved ourselves down the hill, and we are surviving to this day. Another organization called the Yorkies Future Foundation formed or reformed. This is the same group that 12 years before said no to the University of Chicago when they were well into the plans to sell it to a developer. Yorkies Observatory represents the last acres of undeveloped land on Lake Geneva in Wisconsin. It's a very valuable property, but in about 2008, a group, the Yorkies Future Foundation, stopped them once. They reformed in 2018 to stop them again, but this time to negotiate for taking over the property in total. As former employees of the University of Chicago, I was not allowed to participate with this group or with any negotiations. So my job was clear: take those good programs, keep them alive off-site while the YFF negotiated for the transfer of the property. So what we did, we wait. And I never dreamed that it would take a year for this to happen. So in the midst of all of this transfer, I also had to find a new place to live. So I really would like to be back on the property sooner, but I'm hopeful. Just last month, the university did announce that they had agreed in principle to the transfer of the property to the Yorkies Future Foundation. I still assume that we have 1 year at least to survive off-site. So that's pretty much the status of things. We expect that within a year we'll be back in the building. My primary mission right now as president of Geneva Lake Astrophysics and STEAM is to just be the face for an organization that represents, I'm not kidding, at least 75 volunteers. Some of them are in our offices on a weekly basis, and all the communities that have just joined in and been part of Yorkies over the years. So I am the spokesperson for keeping those programs alive. the primary fundraiser and the deliverer of many programs. So we work together to do this, and I'm just really glad to just give you the basics of this struggle. And I hope that someday you'll be able to come visit and get a proper tour about the architecture and the history of this building, and look through the Great Refracting Telescope, which was an optically designed scope, and no globular cluster will ever look the same to you until you've seen it through this scope. It is amazing to stand in that dome when those giant wheels turn and the dome moves and the floor is raised and you put your eye up to some of the best optics in the world. There's just nothing like it. And so we want to continually advocate for and remind both the Yorkies Future Foundation and the University of Chicago that we're watching, that these historic observatories have I don't need to tell you, you already know, that the place that these observatories hold in our hearts and our ability to empower and impassion and motivate the next generation of explorers and observers just can't be matched by anything else. And that science, this beautiful, amazing place should not simply be a museum to be behold, but it should be an active place of astronomy and exploration for generations to come. So I thank you very much for your time, and I would be happy to take any questions that you have about the observatory or its closure or transfer. So thank you. So there are 77 acres of land, and I don't know what that translates for you folks, but it's a lot of land on a very developed lake. So of those 77 acres, we hope that 33 acres of the property right around the observatory will go to the Yorkies Future Foundation. There is the rest of the land. There's undeveloped shoreline, but it's in an environmental corridor. Also, the village of Williams Bay doesn't have enough water. They have to build a new sewage treatment plant before they can have more development in the village. So this area cannot be rezoned. We know right now that the University of Chicago will hang on to about 40 acres of the property, hoping to sell it in the future. That 40 acres is probably worth about $7 million, I believe. The total property, I think they were talking about the property alone to be sold to development was in the $15 to $17 million range. There is about $5 million worth of back maintenance, deferred maintenance that needs to be done on the building, and that needs to be negotiated for as well. We believe that because Charles Tyson, so this is one of the complications I didn't tell you about, I will now. So part of what's held up the transfer of the property has that, and the University of Chicago discovered a month before the closure that if they close it, it doesn't actually belong to them. Yeah, I know, you guys love this, don't you? Yeah, the deed actually reads, should the University of Chicago ever cease to do astronomical investigations at this observatory, that the observatory and its contents shall return to Charles Tyson Yorkies or his heirs as though this conveyance had never happened. Had Yorkies been in Illinois, that deed would have sunsetted at 100 years, but it's in Wisconsin, and deeds don't sunset in Wisconsin, and the University of Chicago lawyers didn't catch that until a month before the closure. So what the University of Chicago did, even though they gave back a National Science Foundation grant and took telescopes off of the Skynet robotic telescope network and moved everyone out of the building and ceased operations, I pulled down their websites and claimed that they were now just closed to the public. So they send students up from University of Chicago once a month to work in the plate vault. There are 100,000 glass plates in the plate vault, which my students had been actively working with and submitting, finding star comparisons for variable stars to the AAVSO for the last 10 years. But we're not in there. They send students up once a month and they call that research. So even though they gave my grant back. So I don't have a chip on my shoulder or anything. Nothing. You won't tell anyone, will you? I get in lots of trouble already. Yeah. So when Hale opened the observatory, it actually was solar observing was the primary focus of the observatory. Globular clusters were a target for many years. In fact, in the 90s, Dr. Kyle Cudworth, who currently is serving on our board, was doing follow-up imaging with that instrument with photographic plates and comparing those to the photographic plates from 100 years ago and calculating proper motions and doing some work on globular clusters. So that's the most recent. Morgan did a star catalog there. You know, there's just, the research just goes on and on. So lots of different things.
I think Kate's going to be around for the rest of the night.
I think I'm going to bed. I'm so tired. You know, they kept me busy at this conference, so I will stick around for just a bit, but I'm going to need to pack it in. There's some people waiting to Uber back to my Airbnb. I get presents.
Don't drink it all, that is. It's my preferred red wine that I give my visitors when they come. And it is a very nice drop, and you should enjoy it immensely.
So there'll be a tour waiting for you when you come to the States.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
Okay, our last speaker will be Stella Kafka. Stella is the current director of the AAVSO, which is the Variable Star Observers repository of all things to do with variable stars. She actively engages the professional community to make sure that amateur astronomers and teachers, plus their students, contribute, thrive and generally benefit from professional investments in time domain astronomy during the upcoming golden age of time domain astrophysics. Her aim is to build even stronger relationships between the AAVSO and the international non-US community. She comes to a position with an outstanding scientific reputation and research track record in cataclysmic variable star community. So I'd like you to welcome Stella to the meeting.
Thank you very much, everyone. First of all, I would like to say that I'm hoping that the whole story of the Yorkies Observatory will have a happily ever after. We're all used to modern telescopes and modern equipment, but the truth of the matter is that until you look through one of these historical telescopes, you don't really appreciate the night sky, and you don't really appreciate the history of astronomy and how much we've made progress in order to appreciate and value the research that is being conducted now. So my heart goes out to Kate, and I wish her the best at her fight to try to revive this historic observatory. But I'm here to talk to you about the American Association of Variable Star Observers. As was said, I am the executive director and CEO of the organization. I've been in that position for the last 15 years. And I would like to start by reminding you that the AAVSO started in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1911, more than 100 years ago, where the then Harvard Observatory director, gathered a group of amateur astronomers to do research, to acquire data for his observational projects. Since then, we have really evolved. We are a truly international organization with members and observers all over the world, individuals who are interested in one or another way of variable stars. The reason why we're doing we're doing what we're doing is because we want to enable anyone, anywhere, to participate in scientific discovery through variable star astronomy. This is our mission. And just looking at this phrase, you see some very, very strong words. You see enable, meaning that we are providing the means for this business. You see anyone and anywhere, no matter who you are, what your background is, where you live, what your accent is, you should be able to be part of the AVSO. And my favorite, actually, part of this mission is participate. Be an active member of this discussion, of this international collaboration, trying to understand some of the craziest and most dynamic phenomena in the universe. Think exoplanets, think black holes, think supernovae, and all kinds of things. So you understand we're talking about a truly diverse community of individuals who are engaged with us. We work a lot with researchers all over the world, professional and non-professional astronomers. Actually, I would include educators in the research community, observers, individuals who have the patience and perseverance to teach the next generation of individuals science. We work a lot with volunteers, and a big portion of our community looks like that. So I would like to introduce you to some of my friends. Barbara Harris and her awesome telescope in Florida. Christine Larsen, who is a solar observer. The sun is a variable star, and there is lots of active research around that. Tessa Hickox, who's one of my mentees, and she won all kinds of awards because she did astronomy. And actually, she's teaching her teacher's astronomy now in New Zealand. A group of individuals, professional astronomers, colleagues of mine who actually come to our meeting to actually advocate for their own research projects and beg for data from AVSO observers, and a whole bunch of students who come and present their research results at our meetings and are part of our research. But before I tell you more about the AVSO and what the AVSO can do for you, if you would like to be involved with variable stars, I'd like to play a game. Who likes games? Oh my goodness, no one likes games. Can I skip for? All right, so the game goes as follows. This is a part of the night sky. This is a part, oh, it works. This is a part of the night sky, and each dot you see here is a star. Big dots are bright stars, small dots are fainter stars, yes? Or you have to talk to me, it's very lonely up here. Yes. Awesome. So what I would like to do as part of this game is assign a number to each of these stars, and that number would represent its brightness. But because I'm making the rules of my game, my rules, I'm going to do things backwards in the sense that I'm going to assign the brighter star of this part of my sky the smaller number to represent its brightness. So this star is number 51, this one is 64, the fainter one is 91, has the largest number, this one is 61, 85, and 75. Yes? Awesome. So you see a star here that I'm going to call Kate, because Kate is a star that does not have a number assigned to it as a representation of its brightness. So how bright do you think Kate is with respect to the rest of the stars in this part of my sky? 64, 65. So the way that we do it is that, is it as bright as this? Brighter or fainter? All right, is it as bright as this? Brighter or fainter? As bright as this? As bright as this? As bright as this? How about as bright as this? Just a little bit fainter, okay? So I go out a week later, and here's the same part of the sky. Here are the same stars, but here's Kate tonight. How bright is Kate at this night? So again, is it as bright as this? Brighter, fainter? Much fainter. Is it as bright as this? Fainter. How about this? How about this? A little bit fainter perhaps, similar maybe. Okay, so here's the third night. Same game, same rules, and here's Kate. How bright is Kate tonight? Same deal, right? Is it as bright as this? Brighter or fainter? Fainter. How about as bright as this? Brighter. How about this? Fainter. How about this? Brighter. How about this? Or this? Somewhere in between this, right? 72.341. Well, Kate is a variable star in the sense that every time we go out there and take an observation, its brightness is changing with respect to the rest of the stars in its vicinity whose brightness is not changing. And by the way, congratulations, you just built your first light curve. A light curve, actually, it's a brightness change of a variable star with time. Just record the brightness of this particular object with respect to another star. This is all there is in variable star astronomy. That's all that we're doing. Here's another example of a light curve. This is a variable star. Again, brightness variation with time. Variable star, brightness is changing with respect to a star whose brightness is not changing. That's all there is to it. Now you know the secret recipe. And you can actually take data of variable stars, either looking through your binoculars, I have a pair of binoculars myself, or looking through your telescope with your own eyes. Your eyes is the best instrument, actually, or using one of the DSLR cameras that you have in order to take pictures of your friends and families on your vacation or your garden, or even putting a CCD camera or a camera, a more sophisticated camera at the edge of a telescope. But in principle, that's all you're doing. You're comparing the brightness of an object that you suspect is changing with respect to the brightness of a whole bunch of objects that are not changing in time. And actually, I would like to convince you even more by showing a little movie that was created from 4 different images, so 4 subsequent images taken the same night, of a globular star cluster. This is M3. This is the core of the cluster here. You can see the gradient in density, so it becomes less dense as you go outside the core. Most of the stars are just doing pretty much nothing in this image, but if you pay very close attention, can you spot the variables? See this one? With these ones, stars that are blinking. The brightness is changing. Those images were taken in a time period of 2 hours. So variable stars can change really, really quickly, and they're very easy to spot, especially if you blink your images back and forth. You can see more of those that are changing in brightness, and you can see a whole bunch of them that are not changing in brightness. So you're comparing their brightness in order to build a light curve. So the AVSO has built light curves like that for more than 100 years. These are some of the data that come from the AVSO database. And light curves of stars come in all shapes and forms, all kinds of different behaviors and all kinds of time scales. This was taken within a couple of months. This was taken within 40 different years, 40 years here. This is another 15 years of data, and this is just a couple of days. So time scales and stellar variability change depending on the nature of the star. And by studying this kind of variable stars, we learn fundamental properties of stars, we learn their ages, we calibrate distances, all kinds of really interesting phenomena in the universe. Without variable stars, actually, we wouldn't know much about the universe. So that's why they're scientifically important. And they're fun to observe. So the AVSO right now has more than 39 million data points in the database. Our database has been increasing with time. These are data that have been collectively acquired by non-professional astronomers mostly, by individuals like you, just looking through their telescope. We have about 30,000 stars in our database, and those stars are being used for research. They're being used for research by professional astronomers, by educators of their students, and by pretty much anyone who is interested and curious to understand how a star is behaving and try to do their own investigation. The interesting thing with astrophysics is that it's the only field in science where individuals who don't have a professional degree can make really significant contribution to science, either by acquiring data or doing some research or actually even participating in the discussion and asking questions. And there's no such thing as a simple question. So I guess that my point is, if you can do something like that, if you can look through your binoculars, you can create pretty pictures, if you are excited about the night sky and you're curious to see what's out there, how does things work, then you can definitely do something like this. You can definitely build light curves and help answer some of the fundamental questions in astrophysics. And I'm here to actually tell you how the AVSO can help you by providing resources for you to even get started or move with your program. So, step one. We have all kinds of educational and training material that is actually free for anyone to download and play with. We have all sorts of manuals for photometry, from visual photometry, how to actually take data through your binoculars, solar photometry, how to safely take observations of the sun. We know that we're not supposed to be looking at the sun directly, right? There's a right answer here. Thank you. We need to have special equipment in order to be able to look at the sun, but at the same time, these manuals are actually giving you instructions on how to do that. DSLR photometry, CCD photometry, observing exoplanets if you're interested in something like that. And of course, we have manuals on all kinds of software. We also have what we call choice courses. These are online 4-week-long seminars that are based on our discussion forums that introduce different aspects of acquiring data or even analyzing data. We have a very active peer mentoring program. You know, different people learn in different ways. When I started my own binoculars program, I had a mentor who stood right next to me and helped me actually star hop until I found the star of my interest. And that was extremely helpful for me. This is how I'm learning. So this is a program that connects non-professional astronomers with their peers. You have a friend who is more experienced than you to bounce ideas off of. So if you want to start your observing program, you're not sure how to go about it, perhaps a mentor could actually help. We also provide targets of interest. There are billion stars in the night sky. How do you know which one you should be observing? How do you know which one is variable and which one is not? And we do that in 2 different ways. We do that through our alerts, and alerts are objects, they're stars that are doing something interesting right now, and individuals really need data on it. Those individuals can be either educators who really are looking for data for a specific student project, or they're professional astronomers who have time perhaps on an X-ray telescope or the Hubble Space Telescope, and they want simultaneous observations from the ground, and they're looking to our observer community for help, anything pretty much that is of interest to someone and they're asking for data. And actually, pretty much our alerts are more of a synopsis of what the project is. It doesn't just provide information on which star to observe, it also tells you why you should observe it. You're a collaborator in this project, so if you want to take data, we may as well just tell you why you should be taking that data, why this particular star is interesting. But also, we have a targets tool that provides a little bit more detailed information. It provides a little bit more flexibility for you to build your own observing program. You know, at the AVSO headquarters, the most frequent question that we get is, what should I observe tonight? The people actually pick up the phone and call. And you know, it's a multi-parameter question. Depends on where you are, what kind of skies you have, what objects you're interested in, what can you see, what is the visibility of your sky, what kind of instrument you have. So that's the reason behind us building this particular tool. So what you see here is the star name, the constellation. There's some people who are really very loyal to their specific constellations, which I find extremely interesting. The right ascension, declination, where this particular star is in the night sky, what type of object it is, if it's a periodic variable, an irregular variable, an erupting variable, all kinds of information on that. What is its maximum and minimum brightness? Remember, it's a variable star. It doesn't have one brightness. It has a range in its brightness. So what the range is, what its period is, if it's a periodic object. Observing cadence is a recommended frequency of observations. What we would like to make sure is that no star is left behind. All stars have at least a long-term light curve built into it. So we try to recommend an appropriate time frequency for some stars to be observed. Whether these are parts of alerts or campaigns, and if they are, which means that they're targets of high interest and high demand, we have a little flag here, a little triangle, and a link to the alert campaign notice. And what you see here is a flag. That flag is usually red when this particular object does not have observations in the AVSO International Database within the cadence, within the time period of desired frequency. When somebody submits a data point, then this flag switches from red to green. Black are stars that are behind the sun, so you cannot observe them. You can pick any specific target. If you're interested in short period pulsators or eclipsing binaries, you can just select and deselect up here. All the columns are sortable. And actually, if you register the location of your observatory or your backyard, if you're doing observations from there, you will get targets only, you can get only the targets that are visible from your site. So you don't really have to actually juggle and get Northern Hemisphere site targets while you're here. You can use this tool to build your whole observing program if you want to. You can use it as a guideline, which stars require observations. You can just use it as an advising of what variable stars exist out there. You can ignore it. You don't have to use this. You can just observe your own stars. Or if you have your own observing program, you're taking a pretty picture, for example, of an object, and suddenly it sets or a cloud comes in front of it, and you don't really want to waste your telescope time. You're already out there, and you need just something to fill 1 hour. You can use this tool for a filler. You can use it any way you want. It's just guidelines. We also would like you to participate in research. We want you to try your hand in research if you want to. There are lots of our observers who take their own data on different stars. They want to do the analysis. Why not, right? So we have different pieces of software that were written by non-professional astronomers, meaning they're easier to use. So we have a light curve generator, which is a quick lookup of a light curve of a star of interest, again, brightness variation with time. You can even select and deselect different observers if you wish, and you can see their data on this light curve. You can see your data on this light curve if you want to. And yes, this particular star was deliberately chosen because there are 2 of my data points up there. And yes, they're right somewhere here. So a little bit of a self-advertisement. Yes, I'm trying to do some visual observing as well. We have VFOT, which is a piece of software that analyzes digital data. So if you are using a DSLR camera or a CCD camera and you want to get a light curve out of a time series of data, you just put them on VFOT and it gives you the light curve. And it's connected actually with our database, so if you want to submit your data in our database, just a click. And we have VStar, which is a very interesting tool for analyzing data. So if you have a student that is doing a project, if you want to do a project, you can use VStar to do all the analysis that you need. Actually, if you really want to do research and you come up with one interesting result, what's really important is to share that result with everybody else. Otherwise, it's as if you've never done the research. So we have a journal for that. This is a journal that publishes correct science, new science. You don't have to have like a spectacular result that is going to win a Nobel Prize. Actually, if your result is going to win a Nobel Prize, there are other journals to publish it. This one is a means of communicating good, solid, honest-to-God science, and you get credit for it once you find a result. That can be just a period of an eclipsing binary, a new exoplanet transit, a new eruption of a nova, maybe discovering a new variable star in the night sky. Something small that you would like to actually share with the rest of the community, and think about it. If you don't share that result, and one of the researchers of the future might need it, then they will have to redo all your research in order to move forward with theirs. So this particular journal is refereed, it's peer-reviewed. It has a template for authors in Word. You can just download the template and cut and paste your own text on it. as simple as that. It publishes all kinds of research articles from review papers, variable star research, instruments, instrumentations. We have lots of observers, lots of members actually, who love building their own instruments, which is actually fantastic, and they share it with the community. We have education and outreach papers, solar astronomy, history and biography, dissertation summaries, master and PhD thesis summaries, and some editorial content. So this is there for you to publish, and actually all the published manuscripts are immediately available to the community, so anyone can read your research results and can use them in theirs. Another piece of research for you, we have what we call observing sections. These are more specialized groups of web pages and individuals that discuss different aspects of stellar variability. So if you want to focus on a specific category of variable stars, go to the relevant observing section. You will learn a lot from there. You would even get targets of interest. You will interact with individuals who have a lot of experience of observing this type of stars. You can get hints of what targets are the cool targets to observe, et cetera, et cetera. And actually, I'm highlighting this because we just started a spectroscopy observing section. This observing section has anything you might need to get started with spectroscopy if you're interested in something like that. You will find from manuals to targets of interest, observer resources, a database where you can submit your own data. The reason why we started that is because light curves and spectra together is a very powerful tool that helps us understand the mechanism of stars. You know, we can't just go to stars and drill in them and find out what they're made of. We can't exactly go break a star in pieces and see what it's doing. All we have in our hands is light, and manipulating light in different ways with different instruments help us understand what's in there. So the AVSO for you, we're building communities, we're building collaborations, we're building international collaborations of individuals who are interested in variable stars. That's all the AVSO is about. As long as you're interested in interacting with your peers in a respectful manner, you're very welcome to join us. So, and I would like to consider this community as a very passionate community where everybody's willing to learn from each other, which I really, really like about the AVSO. We're also maintaining databases. It's very important to have an avenue of storing data and retrieving data on different variable stars, because this is at the very heart, very core of who we are and what it is that we're doing. We are learning. We're helping people to learn different techniques and improve their skills of data acquisition. And we're very welcoming, actually, individuals who are willing to translate our manuals in different languages. Actually, our manual for visual observing is translated in 14 different languages. We're trying to reach out to people in the language they speak. English is not the most widespread language in the world. And also, we have a journal, communication of results, a way of discussing different results with our peers, with the community, for posterity, just pushing the limits of knowledge as much as we can. I would like to end with a final thought. Actually, I saw this cartoon about a month ago, and it resonated with me in so many different ways, because it talks about devices. How many of you has a mobile phone, like a smartphone? Okay, those of you who don't raise your hands, I'm sure you have a smartphone somewhere. How many of you depend on your smartphone? God forbid I lose mine. So there's a conversation between two friends here, right? And they're talking about their devices. The one is saying, you know, what are you doing? The other one responds, well, I'm using my device. What is your device? My device is the sky. Does your device have many applications? Yes, it has sun, moon, clouds, and birds. And do you have to recharge your device very often? I don't ever have to recharge my device. It recharges me. That's one of the beautiful things about astronomy. That's one of the beautiful things about observing. That's one of the beautiful things about participating in research. We come out of that exhausted but rejuvenated. And not only that, we get a perspective about who we are, where we belong. We live in a very boring on a very boring planet around a very boring star, and we're going to live for 100 years. That's putting things in perspective. But at the same time, we have evolved and we're smart enough to explore the universe with the means that we have, our eyes, our telescopes, our binoculars, and share this knowledge with each other and share this knowledge with the future generations so that knowledge is being built up. With that, I would like to leave you with more resources. This is the AVSO webpage. Please take a look. Everything I talked about is there, and even more information can be found there. Please consider to become a member of the AVSO. We are a small nonprofit that depends on membership fees for our continuation of our work. If you have any questions, send us an email, avso@avso.org. Most of those emails come to me and I answer them. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention and ask if there are any questions for me at this point. Thank you very much.
Well, Stella, as a deep sky observer, I have to say you make looking at ordinary stars sound exciting.
Who said the ordinary stars? Who said that stars are ordinary? I didn't pay him to say that. But he's absolutely right. I think that for a community like this and for who you are, what you're doing, variable stars can't be at the center of your attention. You can contribute very significantly to scientific discovery. How about next time I'm in Melbourne, I give you a talk about variable stars?
Absolutely.
Oh, bummer, then it seems that I have to come back. Thank you very much. And since you're all rock stars, I brought you a whole bunch of stickers here. I'm going to leave them here for all of you. And since we started, let's see, we started the AVSO spectroscopy database, so I brought a whole bunch of diffraction gratings. You know, these things are fun when you just, can I do this? Oh, I need a strong, does anyone have a green, yeah, laser pointer? Because I'm a professional astronomer, it doesn't really mean I don't like playing with these things. So, okay, let's do this. Just shine inside. So this is a, yes, you can do research with that, by the way. But I brought a whole bunch of those. Please feel free to take them. I'm going to leave them here for all of you. What's really cool, do not look at the sun with those. And do not look through those and drive at the same time. I feel I have to make a disclaimer. But it's really cool when you walk around Melbourne and you see all these neon signs from restaurants. Neon has very, very bright red light. So you will see all the red lines here. So I'm going to leave those here as well. Thank you very much.
For you giving the talk.
Thank you very much. I
Hope you
appreciate
enjoyed
it.
It's one of my favourites. So
Ooh.
if I enjoyed that.
All right, it's drinking time, people. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, as time is getting on, we'll push forward and just finish off with a few of the section announcements, and then we'll go into our supper. Ken?
Most of the announcements
Just kill that one. Yeah. All right. So, Barry, you didn't want to say anything about the library, did you? Or is he just going to let it go through the slides? Okay, there's an announcement for our next meeting in January on the 25th at the LMDSS, Dark Sky meeting. Of course, you get an opportunity at our Starbecue, which comes up in a few weeks' time. Week and a half's time. Who's going to the Starbecue from here? Okay, that is the right answer. Who's not going to the Starbecue? Boo! Okay, good. I'll look forward to seeing you there. Okay, are we done? Yes? Yes, go ahead. No?
Hello, I'm the librarian, I'm the head librarian. There's four people in the library team. The library's open tonight after the meeting. I'll make an announcement at the time and John and I will take you there if you want to come. That was a very good presentation by Kate and Stella. I thought there was going to be something on robotic telescopes. I think we had the wrong information there, didn't we? Something like that. Anyway, the main reason I want to talk about was the fact that we got a lot of new books and donated books went into the library tonight. One of the new books was Cosmic Chronicles by Fred Watson, who you all probably heard of him. And we got him at the Great Melbourne Telescope function he was at. I got him to sign the book. That's all right, that's in the library. I don't think it's going to come. Southern Gems, Pearls of the Southern Skies. And we got some other donated books as well, too, from the Swinburne Library, donated. And we haven't really got the time, have we? But that was fascinating, a discussion on Yerkes. Yerkes is the largest refracting telescope in the world, isn't it? 36 inches, yeah, I believe it is. That was fascinating talk. And certainly, if you want to learn about variable stars, that Stella was good on that. Yeah. You've left the thing out, the first thing out that we didn't want to know because it wasn't on robotic. That's good. And there's the books. Well, that'll do, I think. I'll make an announcement. We're going to the library after we've had supper. For those who would like to come along.
Okay, thanks. That's it, but Barry Clark has requested 30 seconds, so everyone put their stopwatches on. Because Barry's renowned for not taking 30 seconds. But he's going to talk to us now.
Okay, at Science Works, if you look around the shelves, you'll find one of these for $13, I think it was. It's a beautiful optical glass prism, polished faces, dense flint glass. It makes a beautiful spectrum, about that long, from about that high in the sunlight. It's ideal for reproducing Newton's famous prism experiment. An ideal Christmas present, Science Works. It's even better to buy it for yourself.
Wow. Amazing, Barry. That was about 30 seconds. Well done. That concludes tonight's presentations, and I'd like you now to partake in supper. Those who have brought a plate, thankfully with food on it, could you bring them into the main hall and let's enjoy the rest of the night. Thank you, everyone.